Today is the third day of this June 1985 7-day retreat. At first, I want to say something about quietness throughout the house, particularly on the bedroom floors. The house seems to be a very solid structure, particularly that formidable cement ceiling floor, which separates the bedroom area from the dining room. But we're finding that heavy footsteps reverberate throughout the house, not only in the area where they're taking place, but particularly in those areas. So is it possible to walk very gently without this causing complications for oneself, that rather than walking gently because one has heard that other people at their rest time are disturbed by heavy footsteps, and therefore walking quietly, that one doesn't create an image of a tiptoeer or feel that one has to do this to follow a rule and therefore become rule conscious and either reacting against the rule or trying to conform to it. The fact is that people have reported that they're disturbed by loud footsteps at the time when they wish to rest. So if one keeps that in mind as one walks, particularly in the bedroom area, maybe even putting oneself into the position of a person trying to rest and listening to the sound of the footsteps, not my footsteps, but the walking, the sound of the walking, then maybe the noise will by itself become minimal. They're unavoidable sounds, but if care is taken in the way one walks, not just thumping, digging the heels in, or whichever way one is walking, one may not even be aware of how one is walking. It may be interesting to listen to it. Become aware of the whole body. Must give oneself a terrific jolt if one walks very heavily. Not, I must change it, I must become better, or the reaction against this kind of stuff, but listening to the sound of the walking, keeping in mind that someone may be resting. The other disturbance that has been reported is that of the doors, particularly in the bedroom area. It's so interesting how by eliminating one problem, one always seems to create a new one. We've put multitudes of bathrooms up there, so one wouldn't have to wait in line and have a toilet if one needs to go quickly without waiting. But now there are multitudes of doors that are opening and closing. And these doors may not have the usual feel to them. For one thing, they're new. They've been newly installed. We have installed solid doors, put extra money into it so that there would be sound proofing, but heavy doors make a heavy impact if they're not guided carefully into the lock. And one may not be used to this. I've smashed several doors, not being used to how they close. So can one take the time? There is time here. We have 7 days times 24 hours. There is time to find out how a door works, to get the feel of it. Of course, if one is engaged in thinking about something else, then when one isn't aware and smash, the door has slammed. After slamming it a few times, which gives oneself a jolt, maybe the next time one will be there and wonder, how does this door operate? It has been said here to turn the knob, and with the turned knob in the hand, pull the door carefully until the two places mesh, where whatever you call that little thing goes into the hole as the knob is released. Someone who felt the disturbance said that if one hears somebody caringly opening a door, it isn't quite the same disturbance, and I know this for myself. Attention in doing it conveys itself. And as I said before, there are sounds which are unavoidable. Can one take care of the extra, which is very often the result of inattention? This is so interesting to find out. When a door has smashed, one realizes immediately where the mind was, not on the knob, someplace else. Maybe in the image, I'm a very careful door closer, and the door smashes. It is so interesting to learn about oneself in the process. Or one may think, why does this person have to sleep now while I am waking? It may not be such a gross way of putting it, but one may have such feelings. When oneself gets up early or stays up late, one has the feeling the whole world is awake with one. But it isn't. Some people sleep during the day. Somebody may be resting in the bedroom area while one rushes up during a walking period to go to the bathroom. You could say, well, that's not sleeping time, but we're not setting these times for ourselves. Let somebody sleep during the day, maybe awake during the night. It's not my business how somebody uses the schedule for herself or himself. This was reported too, that there is a quality of rushiness in the coming upstairs and the going to the bathroom and coming out, particularly in the morning. We did create these many bathrooms so there would be no feeling of pressure on people that they have to get in there and have to get out of there. One may still have that old habit of needing to rush. But from all I understand, that there is enough time. Another thing is the getting up a little bit earlier than the wake-up time, then to be especially quiet and not to use the upstairs bathroom. If one gets up maybe 3:45 or 3:30, then please use the bathroom which is in the shower room. In the shower room, not the other basement bathroom, because that's next door to and right underneath bedrooms. But the shower room bathroom, I think you all know which one I mean. That is sort of isolated. So you get up in the morning, a short while before the rising time, please use that bathroom. Because some people sit late and then need that morning sleep. You say, why are you so concerned about people's sleep? Isn't the retreat there for waking up? This is, of course, ancient spiritual indoctrination, the disparagement of sleep. But if one is factual about oneself, one realizes that the brain, the nervous system, the physical organism needs some rest time, and if the sleep is profound and without dreams, it's that much the better. One wakes up refreshed and regenerated. One may not need to sleep as long during a retreat as one does during one's daily life. It may vary, may be different. Or since we are on sleep, if during a round of sitting, which we have agreed not to leave, not to move during a round of sitting, if one is overwhelmed by tiredness, then to question, to wonder what this tiredness is. Not have any idea or conclusion about it, but let the mind be in a state of not knowing and being that tiredness, and not calling it tiredness, because then we know it already and have associations. I shouldn't be tired, I wish I could go to bed, all the associations with tiredness. But if you don't call it that, you don't know this state, but you wonder about it and the attention is there, you may find it is something entirely different from what you think it is. Because the thought, the word, and the associations is not this state in which one finds oneself. And when attention or awareness is there, I'm using these words interchangeably right now, it changes. One may get more tired. Don't know about it ahead of time. Don't wait for a miracle to happen. Then the thought process is there to interfere and to cut up into now and then. If one enters a bedroom and one sees a person resting, if one really completely sees that person resting, then oneself is that resting person. One is not separate. And there will be care in the movements. Because some people are lighter, much lighter sleepers than others. And one may not know from experience how it is to be a light sleeper, where every drip in the water faucet may wake one up. Or be, not just wake one up, but be a grating noise on the nervous system. So to learn about each other and respect differences. I was going to start out discussing this morning something that has been brought up by several people in meetings, not just in this retreat. It always comes up. It came up in the California retreat. I'm phrasing it in a new way, not verbally, literally quoting anybody. You talk about sitting in awareness. Sometimes people put it this way, working on awareness, but this is a misnomer. It's not, one cannot work on awareness. Either awareness is there or it isn't there. And if one thinks I must work on awareness, that's a thought. And at that instant, there's no awareness. So you talk about sitting in awareness, listening to the chirping of the birds. And yes, that happens at times. But then I ask myself, where do I go from here? Is that all? Just sitting there listening to the chirping of the birds? that question is asked frequently. And another question that comes up is, at times you talk about awareness, at other times you talk about questioning. Is this something one does simultaneously, or what is the difference between these two things? Let's see if these two questions somehow or other can be looked at together. Again, I'm not talking as an authority, an expert. Somebody said, I see you as an expert in these matters. I'm not. I don't know right now where this talk will take us. I have not prepared it. So can we all participate in it freely from scratch? Not already starting out with a division between the teacher, the expert, and me, I don't know what one considers oneself then, student, non-expert. But there is a division there, you see that. If one comes to this talk with these concepts in mind, can it turn around that we're all now starting out together on this, not knowing where it will take us? And therefore, listening to this moment, not just to the words and what they evoke in the mind, but looking right now. So the question was, sitting in awareness, there's the listening. The way it's usually put is there's the listening to the chirping of the birds. And then, where do I go from here? Where do I go from here? In listening right now, is there just this chi-chi-chi-chi-chi-chi-chi? Or is there already the word, the birds are chirping? I wonder what species that is. There are different ones, there must be different species. One, I think, is a cardinal, the other a robin. Is that going on? Then the mind is already divided. There is the knowledge, the words and the associations, and the listening sort of is in the background. That is not quite as clear anymore, because what has now become important is the labeling and all the associations that recalls in the mind, having seen these birds before, knowing about their habits, if one is a bird watcher. Or another association may be, I'm pretty good now. Having sat here for 2 days, I can really differentiate this bird from that. I never was able to do that. This may not have happened in this retreat, but if you walk with somebody and you can put your finger on the bird meaning a word, a name, this may elicit pride in one, the pride and knowledge. It may not, but one has to watch it. Whether this cherished ancient role of the knower, the one who knows, doesn't come up and fulfills one for a moment, particularly if the other person one walks with doesn't know anything about birds and may admire one for knowing about them. Or it may just be that one is interested in birds and exchanges what one knows. And there may not be pride, but this activity may become more important, more prominent in the brain than the quiet listening, which doesn't know and doesn't tag. Or a label flits up and is gone already again because it is felt as an interference in this open-ended, not knowing listening. In that open-ended listening, there is no knower, no listener. The listener is the one who needs to know, label, and then react. I like this, I don't like that, I'm good at it, I'm not good at it. That is the birth of the me, the rebirth of the me, we can say. And as that is reborn, or emerges, I don't want to get associations with that word, then it usually becomes more important than the listening, because it's an ancient habit, has tremendous momentum behind it. To be somebody, or in the case of the questions that have been put, where do I go from here? At that moment, when this thought comes up in the mind, the listening is in the background or not there at all. Please find it out for yourself. Look at it when this question comes up. Because one may be so taken over by the question that one doesn't even question the question. It fills out the whole being, either with hope that there may be some place to go, or with frustration that one has no place to go. This seems too little for all the effort put into it, just to listen to the chirping birds. I'm not trying to ridicule. We're looking at this, we're looking at ourselves. When there's just listening and no one there, the question doesn't exist, where do I go from here? Because when there's space and no time, because when there's complete listening, there's no sense of time, because thought is quiet. Then the question doesn't come up, doesn't exist. Where do I go from here? Because there's no here and there. That's already a creation of thought. I'm here, and in the future I may be someplace else. Do you see that this is thinking? And that our future goals, which we cherish, are thoughts, concepts, ideas, whatever word you want to give to them. A state of wholeness, a state of liberation, a state of enlightenment, a state of union or oneness, merging with the Godhead. Do you realize, as you look at it right now, that these are thoughts, concepts, and does a feeling of guilt over maybe being sacrilegious come up too? One says enlightenment is a concept, or oneness with God or the Father or the whatever. That one treads on dangerous ground in seeing that and looking at it. because these concepts have been indoctrinated into one at a very early age often. If one at a later age exchanged one for another, provided by another religion, the old feelings and emotions hold of a feeling of sacredness. I don't mean sacredness which is totally devoid of thought and indoctrination and concept. It's rather a sacredness to be feared and respected and approached in a very defined way, or else there may be punishment or bad karma. Please look at that when you sit. All right, now, as it comes up, that a goal toward which I would like to go, or for which I would hope, is at this instant a concept. No matter who pronounced it. Who wrote about it? How sacred the writings in which it is described have been described, have been labeled sacred, treated with certain respect or ritual. A lot of sacred books are treated in a very prescribed way. Some of them may not be touched or looked at by the layperson, only by the priest or whatever the name of the person who has divided himself up from the rest of the population as the one authorized to handle the sacred scriptures. He didn't do this on his own. It's already a long tradition of doing that, which usually was not planned or originated with the one who spoke those words. These things usually come later. Does one realize that the goal of liberation, enlightenment, wholeness, salvation, union, is at this moment a concept? So that the hope is for a conceived state, a conceptualized state. And while this hope arises, or the longing for it, one does not hear the chirping of the birds. One isn't here. One is in one's thought processes, in one's fantasy, with all that this fantasy may arouse in one: energy, ardor, willingness to self-sacrifice. Also something else to see about goals, other than that they're concepts taken over from hearing or writing. There is also the time element in it. This liberation isn't now, the enlightenment isn't here, it is in the future. And what is the future? Is the future something real as the chirping of the birds? Or does this whole concept of future involve thinking? projection into something which one conceptualizes as a later time, our brain can do all of that, and it is doing it. The brain, by being the storehouse of vast memories, personal memories and collective memories, racial memories, can from these memories, through the process of thought, project something conceptualized as a future time. But there's nothing real about it. It's a thought projection. Do you see that? Do you see that anything that happens always happens now, this instant, including the thought about the future? Thought about enlightenment, the thought about what one has read, and the hope, the yearning arising throughout the physical body and the mental state of it, is happening now. But usually has a very limited abiding in the thoughts and taking what thought projects as memory or as future, as past or as future, taking that for real, for the real world. It's just thought. Because the process of thinking as it is going on with neurons and synapses and brain cells and all of this stuff, that's real, that's going on, but one is not aware of that. One is aware of the very content of thought. The idea of enlightenment and wanting to go there from here. And wondering if there's hope for me, which is thought, involving comparison with others, which is also thought. This question which was brought up sitting in awareness, and questioning what's the difference between the two. Is there a difference? I'm confused about this. What should I do? The implication there also being, please tell me what to do. At which moment one gives up this immense possibility to see something for oneself, to stand on one's own 2 feet. One asks somebody else to give one an answer, to give one a method, a technique. Then one becomes enslaved, chained to that person, and exploitable, which is going on all the time. We started out with this awareness where there's just chit-chit, chit-chit. And then a moment of inattention, a feeling of boredom maybe, or dissatisfaction, which is habitual. And then out of that, the thought, where do I go from here? Is this all? Either one is captivated by these thoughts and keeps thinking in loops, it usually goes around in loops, Or else one becomes aware, or one wonders, what am I doing right now? What's going on? What's the state of the mind right now? That's questioning. The awareness isn't there at that moment. Boredom or dissatisfaction, inattention came up, and generating thoughts about where to go. Then can one wonder what one is doing? What is happening? Where did these thoughts come from? What is a thought? What is time? This is questioning. Not taking for granted that this happens and being locked into it, but wondering why it happens. Not looking for an answer, but putting oneself an intelligent question about it. In the manner in which we've been doing it, by questioning, I do not mean creating oneself a question and then repeating that over and over and over. Which is very often the content of spiritual practice, repeating a question over and over, and it has certain effects on the brain, on the nervous system, on the physical organism. It may produce a state of tranquility, feeling of bliss or peacefulness. For a limited period of time. But in talking about questioning, I don't talk about that, about repeating a sentence, a question or a word, automatically, mechanically, over and over, to attain a state, to have an experience. Questioning meaning to have a question about what's actually going on in oneself. One wants to find out, not just take it for granted, ignore it, get used to it, be unconscious of it, but wonder about it. And then not giving into the habitual response of the brain to gather answers, verbal, intellectual answers, but to watch and observe and listen in the light of the question that one has asked. And for that, the mind needs to be still. If it's churning with answers or with conclusions, it can't listen. One person said, I've talked a lot about awareness and I've thought I was aware, but I realized I don't know what awareness is. What is it? And I didn't have the feeling this person wanted an answer. It's a good question. To leave sit there and then watch in the light of this question. How one attends, what all comes up. We've gone through it several times today. What this division is that seems to be so real. The birds outside and me inside here listening to them, a space in between. A separation. It is this separation that is at the root of all sorrow in this world. Separation between me and you. me as this identity, and you as that identity or image. And this thing which is the cause of sorrow, fight, war throughout the world, can be observed right here on the mat or in walking, sitting, standing, whichever is the best way for each one to do it. To wonder about this separation, if it is felt. What is it? Who is this separate entity that feels itself so apart, so isolated, enclosed, caught, versus everything else that is not me? If one suffers, really suffers from the separation, feels the pain, knows the pain of it, and sees the pain of it throughout the world, then the question will be a passionate one. What is it? What is this separation? What is this separate entity here? What makes for it? Can that be unearthed, discovered, shed light on? I don't know. But if the question is passionate, then the attention will have a lot of energy. Does one think, I don't have this passion? Others may, but I don't. Can one start with what is there and not want something that's not there, because there is the division? Start with what's there without knowing it from yesterday or from a moment ago, because this instant is not a moment ago. It's not yesterday, and it's not tomorrow. What is it? If I don't know and I don't want it to be otherwise, We will end here for today.